So, in this lecture, we're going to be talking about some hacks and methods that can make the beating procrastination journey way easier. We want to look into hacking the procrastination system. It's like playing GTA 5. When you have cheat codes, it becomes way easier. So take this lecture as a sum of all the cheat codes that you can use when you are playing the procrastination game. And the first method, or the first cheat, is the 1, 2, 3 method. Every time you want to procrastinate, just close your eyes and count to 3. Once you count to 3, you go and you finish the task. You don't listen to the procrastinating thoughts in your mind. You just count to 3 and you go and finish the task. Now, the goal is to make a habit out of it. So when every single time you want to procrastinate, you would close your eyes, count to 3, and then go finish the task, it will become a habit. Eventually, it will become automatic. Imagine getting to a point where every single time you want to procrastinate, you would count to 3 and then you'd be able to finish the task without procrastinating at all. You can make a habit out of this method, and the goal is to actually make a habit out of it for it to become automatic, and you will get to a point where you will be effortlessly beating procrastination without even having to think about it or putting any mental energy towards it. And of course, this method is not at all complicated. It just needs a bit of willpower, consistency, and persistence. Every single time you want to procrastinate, 1, 2, 3, and go do it. 1, 2, 3, and go do it until it becomes a lifestyle. Now, the second method is the bracelet method. Get an elastic bracelet and keep it on your wrist. Let's call this bracelet the procrastination bracelet. Every time you want to procrastinate, what you would do is you would snap the bracelet on your wrist and then go do the task. You will be creating cognitive connections. How? We talked before about how the human brain and the human nature tends to avoid pain. If every single time you have the thoughts of procrastinating and you snap the bracelet on your wrist, you will feel pain. And eventually, if you keep doing that, your mind will link procrastination to pain, because every single time you want to procrastinate, you have thoughts of procrastination, you feel pain, and your mind wants to get rid of the pain. So in order for your mind to get rid of the pain, they need to get rid of procrastination, because for the mind, this is what's causing the pain. And then you'll get to a point where your mind would automatically avoid procrastination just because your mind wants to avoid feeling the pain. But keep in mind something really important, that it's not enough to snap the bracelet on your wrist every single time you feel like you want to procrastinate, but it's important to go and work on the task or even finish the task as soon as you snap the bracelet and it hurts. Then you go and you finish the task, because after you finish the task, you're going to feel a sense of accomplishment. So you're not just linking procrastination to pain, you are linking avoiding procrastination to a sense of accomplishment, happiness, and joy of success. Now we're going to talk about the third method, which is the ABC method. In time management, we are going to talk about the concept of prioritizing and finishing the big tasks first so you don't drain your willpower. But when you risk that you might fall into procrastination, using this method is always a better solution than procrastinating. So what is this ABC method? Let's say A is number 1, B is number 2, and C is number 3. And the reason why I didn't call it the 1, 2, 3 method is because we already talked about a method that is called the 1, 2, 3 method, and it might cause some confusion. But let's consider ABC as 1, 2, 3. What this method is all about is to explain you cannot start with number 3 or C because it's usually bigger than B and bigger than A. 3 is bigger than 2 and bigger than 1. Therefore, when the task is bigger, of course, it needs a lot more work and you're more likely to procrastinate. But when you start with A, which is number 1, which is the easiest task, in fact, it'll be easier for you to avoid procrastination because the task is smaller, it demands less mental energy and less willpower consumption and motivation overall. So if you ever get a feeling that you want to procrastinate, one of the methods that you might want to use is the ABC method. When you have a lot of different things that you need to do, start with the smallest task to make sure that you just start. Now we're going to talk about the next hack, which is called the 10-minute rule. When you feel like you want to procrastinate, it is fine. You can procrastinate. But first, you are going to work for 10 minutes on the task you are trying to avoid. And of course, the goal is to turn this 10 minutes rule into a habit as well. When you want to procrastinate on something, don't try to resist. Just say, okay, it's fine. I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to procrastinate. But first, I'm just going to work on this task for 10 minutes. Because usually, most of the times, what you need is just to start. And once you start, you're good to go. You're not going to procrastinate anymore because you just want to get it over with. So the goal is to just get you started and then you're good to go. Researchers found that most people who procrastinate on a daily basis, once they start with a task, they are less likely to procrastinate and more likely to follow through and actually finish the task. So now we're going to talk about a method that is not as easy as the methods we talked about before, but it is extremely effective and beneficial. The root method. What is the real reason behind procrastination? Are you stressed because you had a fight with your wife? Are you worried where your kids are? Are you expecting grades or a promotion and you're stressed about the outcome because you're not sure what's going to happen? Good. You found the root. And now what you need to do, I am asking you to procrastinate. Leave everything you have and focus on whatever is causing this stress or causing this distraction away from the task that you're trying to work on. If it's a problem with your wife, stop everything and go solve the problem. If you're worried about grades or you're worried about a job promotion, try to know more about it to feel less stress, or just accept the fact that you have to wait in order for you to know the grade or if you got the promotions or not. You're worried where your kids are, you stop everything, you call them, and you make sure that you know where they are. Whatever is causing this procrastination, whatever the reason is, you need to stop everything and try to solve this problem. Otherwise, it will keep going back to you and you will keep procrastinating over and over again, and you'll have very poor performance because of the roots that are causing these problems. And finally, the last method we're going to talk about is the last resource, and it is not highly recommended. I would not recommend it to anybody unless they get to a point where they are in a really low place and they just need something to get out of this hole that they're in. And the method is called the last minute pressure method. And the way it works is when you have a task that you keep on procrastinating, sit down and try to figure out how long would this task take you to get it over with. You might think that it would take you 10 hours. You might think that it would take you 25 hours. Whatever the number is, whatever you think this task needs in terms of hours, double it. And then procrastinate. Leave the task until you're 20 hours before the deadline. Guess what? At this point, the pressure of the deadline will push you to avoid procrastination because the pain that you would get from not finishing the task on time and submitting whatever you had to submit on the deadline, this pain is much bigger than the joy you will get out of procrastinating and doing something that would bring you a little bit of happiness and this small dopamine rush. But again, there's a lot of risk to this method. I wouldn't recommend it. I did use it sometimes when things were really bad, but I wouldn't recommend it. There are a lot of other methods that are more helpful, but if you get to a point where you have a lot and you're crammed up with deadlines, try using this method, but try it on small tasks first. Don't try it on immediately on your final exam that's worth 80% of your final grade. You need to test it out and make sure that you know the steps that you need to take, and you need to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing.